You know who knows a lot about collective bargaining agreements? Daryl Morey. He's the GM of the Rockets. The GM of, surprising for many, but I'm sure not for Daryl, the 15-7 red-hot Houston Rockets. Daryl, how are you, sir?
Nick, thanks for having me on.
Of course. No, I appreciate it. We can talk about James Harden and the NBA and all that stuff, but first I want to do this. What is, when you're watching or listening to basketball analysis, the talking heads like myself, what is the biggest misconception about the league? Like, what is something you hear a lot of people say and take as just gospel or a truth that you're listening and you're like, actually, the opposite is true?
I don't know about the opposite. I'd say probably the number one thing is people will say, why don't they just trade this guy for that guy? Like that's easy. The reality is there's a huge friction to all trades in the league. People have offensive playbooks, defensive styles. Teams are risk averse. It's very hard to get trades done. And I think fans a lot of times say, oh, you could definitely trade this guy for that guy. Go get that done.
Well, it's funny you say that. Having lived in Houston, there was, for a long time, people were saying, the Rockets should go get Ryan Anderson. Why don't they get Ryan Anderson? Trade for Ryan Anderson. And then the trade couldn't happen, but as a free agent, like you obviously did go get Ryan Anderson. I'm wondering the opposite of my previous question.
He's a great example, actually. I think we tried to trade for him about 2,000 times. And I honestly, at some point, could not understand why he wasn't traded because, put it this way, we would have easily taken a lot less than we were offering for him if we were on the other side of the transaction. But for whatever reason, teams have their own internal calculus on, how they value things. And, the decision-making unit at every team is like a snowflake. It's very different. It's like, on some teams there's a football guy involved. At some teams there's the owner's, wife or, you never know how decisions are being made at other teams. You have a good idea because that's part of your job, but that's why trades are so hard. They're hard even if you're dealing with one person, but you're really dealing with usually 4 to 8 people at every team that have some hand in the decision.
Daryl Morey with his GM of the Rockets. They're 15-7, fourth seed right now in the Western Conference. Daryl, you're an MIT guy. You're a very analytical guy. You're a very smart guy. I think partially
That's
because...
a setup. That was just a setup right there.
No. I mean, it was a setup, but it wasn't like a bad setup. I think partially because of your success and the success outside of basketball, that guys with, I would say, similar lines of thinking as that you have, there are a lot more GMs than in the past that are maybe more numbers heavy and more analytical. I'm curious, is it easier for you to work transactions with GMs that think similarly to you or GMs that maybe are more traditional? Because I could see it both ways. The guys that think like you, maybe you see the same market inefficiency they do, so they don't want to make a trade. Or guys that think differently than you, just there's a natural pushback there. Is there a difference between the way you interact with different GMs depending on what their, I guess, general outlook on the league is?
Yeah, I love that question because it's like so critical to every GM's job. So part of our job, as I just said, is to understand those different decision-making units. And yeah, there are teams that think similar, and there are teams that think different. In general, you want a team that thinks similar when your franchises are at very different stages of their life cycle. So if you're in a rebuild phase and you're trading with a team that's playing very well or contending for the title, you actually want them to think similar because the trades become easier because, you may, value similar, trading the veteran from your rebuilding team to get like a future draft pick from the contending team. And because your values are similar and you're in different phases, there's very little friction to those deals, and they're easier to get done. We ended up doing several deals with Philly when we were contending and they were rebuilding for that reason. When your franchises are in the same phase, meaning like both trying to contend for the title, then you actually want very different values on the players and draft picks because otherwise it's very hard to get deals done because you're looking at things in the same way. If you don't have a a mismatch in value across those teams in the same phase, it's very hard to get deals done because you're looking at things the same way.
Make Daryl Morey with us a few more minutes. Make the case for me, if you believe it, and I think you do, that James Harden is the best player in the Western Conference.
Well, you and I debate this all the time.
Why? Go ahead. Sorry.
Why does it just do the Western Conference?
Because I'm trying to be fair. I'm not trying to put you in a jackpot. Like in the Eastern Conference, there might be the greatest player to ever play basketball.
Don't you know? You don't know how to do this yet, Nick. You're supposed to get me to say some hot button phrase, and then 2 minutes after I'm off, you're supposed to put it on your blog with a really bad headline and a clip of it. So
Daryl Morey says James Harden could kick LeBron James's ass today on the. All right, no, but I guess so. Do it however you want, but make the case for James Harden however you see him.
Well, I mean, we'll start on his strongest case on offense. So, by far, he creates the most points for his team, either directly through him or through his passing, and it's efficient in both. So not only is his own scoring efficient, i.e. score a lot of points with few possessions, but his passes are extremely high, lead to extremely high percentage offense. Shots at the rim, dunks, open three-pointers. So on the offensive end, I think, it's going to be very difficult to find someone better. On the defensive end, I would argue he's underrated. So people talk about him as a bad defender, but they leave out the fact if he's not the best defensive rebounder at his position, he's top 3 or 5 or so. I forget when I looked last. And ending your defense ending your defensive possession with a rebound is absolutely critical. So that's one thing. Second, on the ball, he's very good. And 2, he makes a lot of turnaround plays. So to us, he's a two-way player, obviously elite and one of the best players ever on offense. And on the defensive side of the ball, he's been very, very unfairly miscast. And I think you look at other top offensive players throughout history, his defense stacks up with most of them, if not better.
And listen, now that Vine's going out of business, his defense won't be a problem anymore.
They still are going to have YouTube and Twitch, and so I think we're probably still going to have video.
Daryl Morey, GM of the Rockets. I'm curious, and I very briefly here. Well, you know what? I can't actually. I was going to ask you about Russell, but you get fined like $1 million if you talk about anyone else, right? You can't talk about other players.
If you ask me, I think I can say something, but probably better for me to not get in trouble.
Okay. Once upon a time, I'm going to tell this story quickly and I'll let you go. Once upon a time, I was doing a local radio interview, and Daryl accidentally maybe almost said something about another player in the league that could have cost him a lot of money. And I considered texting him like, hey, I'm going to do exactly what he described. Tweet it out, put it on the blog. But the fine would have been $100,000. I should have just made you give me $50,000.
Now you're thinking like a GM. That's smart.
Thank you, Daryl. Talk to you later, brother. Good luck.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. There's Daryl Morey.